Morning everyone, so what we're going to be looking today is the topic of surds. It's not an easy topic, so please make sure you pay attention for it. Now, first thing I would like to do is I would like to try these questions. So pause the video and try these questions for me. So let's go through the answers. Seven, 3, 3. 24, 4, 12, 6, 12, 63, and 25. So the question I would expect you to have a difficulty was maybe this one, 10 times 10 plus 44. So that gives you a square root of 144, which is actually the number 12. And the bottom one is the third root of 125 times root 25, which is simply 5 times 5. And 16 take 5 plus 16 is the third root of 27, which is actually just simply the number 3. Third root of something means you multiply something 3 times. So the square has an area of 36 centimeters squared. What is the perimeter of the square and how do you know? Well, you know that the perimeter of the square is by adding, but you know the area is 36. How do you work out the area? It's base times height. So because A is a square, it means the base and the height will be equal. So it's 6 times 6. But you want perimeter, so it's 4 lots of 6's, which is 36. 4 lots of 6, which is actually 24, not 36 even, sorry, I apologise. A cube has a volume of 125 centimeters cubed. Can you find the side length? Well, because it is a volume, it's base times height times the length. Okay, so it is cube root of 125, which is actually simply 5, because 5 times 5 times 5 would give you 125. So let's have a look at these questions here, okay? So simplifying surds we're going to be doing, that's the main thing. So find a value. Evaluate, what does the value actually stand for? Evaluate stands for working out, okay? Find the value. So square root of 81 is what? 9. 5 squared is what? 25. And so on. 7 squared is 49. Square root of 121 is 11. So the hardest one is square root 74. Well, square root 74 is actually something that we cannot work out unless we actually use a calculator. So we know that square root 74 is between the square root of 64 and square root of 81. So between 8 and 9. That's the only thing that I know. But we need to use a calculator. So the calculator we give is 8.602325267. Okay. So that is why square root 74 is actually a surd. The square root of many numbers cannot be found exactly. For example, the value of square root 3 cannot be written exactly as a fraction or decimal. The value of square root 3 is a rational number. For this reason, it is often better to leave the square root sign in and write the number as square root 3. And square root 3 is an example of a surd. So which of these numbers down here is not a surd? If you've done it correctly, it should be square root 9, because square root 9 actually is 3, which is a proper number. So if you want to actually pause this video and write a definition of what a surd is, it looks like a square root but cannot be worked out. Surds are irrational numbers, non-terminating, nor recurring decimals that cannot be written as fractions. So we're going to look now, we're going to look for true or false questions. Okay, so you can use your calculator or your skills. So square root 9 times square root 4. Is it equal to square root 36? Square root 3 times square root 5 is equal to square root 8. Square root 2 times square root 7 is equal to square root 14. Well, square root 9 is 3. Square root 4 is 6. It is 2 even, so 3 times 2 is 6. Square root 36, it is actually 6, so therefore that's why it's true. Square root 3 times square root 5 is actually false. Now, that would be equal to square root 15, because I can simply multiply in between. Square root 2 times square root 7 will actually be square root 14, so that is actually true. Next, so square root 2 divided by square root 8 divided by square root 2. Is it equal to square root 6? That is actually false. Okay, why is that? Because that is actually equal to square root 4. Is square root 10 divided by square root 5 equal to square root 2? Yes, it is. So that is true. And is square root 100 divided by square root 25 equal to square root 4? That is also correct, because 25 goes into 100 4 times. So these are the rules that you're going to be using, okay? So when you're multiplying and when you're dividing, you can actually put the two roots together into one, and you can break the one root into 2 or 3 if needed. So pause the video and try these questions here for us. So you should have square root 2 times square root 3 would actually give you square root 6. And there's nothing else you need to write. Next one, square root 8 divided by square root 4 would give you simply square root 2. Continuing, square root 5 times square root 10 is square root 50. And then we've got to divide that by 2. So therefore it's 50 divided by 2, square root 25, which simply gives you the number 5. So obviously you've not got many whiteboards, okay, but feel free to try these questions. You should not feel free, you should be trying these questions even. Now, so the first one, what does it be? It'd be square root 15. Second one, square root 16. Now, if you can simplify it, you need to be doing so. So square root 16 is actually the number 4. Right, square root 24 divided by square root 8 would be equal to what? Square root 3. And I'm finished, nothing else I need to do there. Square root 12 divided by square root 3 would be equal to square root 4. Or 2. Same again here, I simply multiply the three things. Square root 2 times square root 2 times square root 8, which gives us square root 32. And the bottom, square root 100. Which is 10. Same again here. Square root 32 times square root 2 gives us square root 64, divided by square root 8, which gives us square root 8. Square root 5 times square root 3 gives us square root 15, divided by square root 15, which gives us 1. So as you can actually see, okay, you get 7 plus 8 minus and 8. These are grade 7 and 8 questions. They're not easy questions, but if you follow the pattern, you should be able to do every single question. So the main thing we're doing today is writing surds in the simplest form. So the most important thing is for you to know your square numbers, okay? So by using the square numbers, we are going to simplify these surds. So you're always trying to find the biggest possible square number that fits into the number given to you, and then you're going to use the multiplication rule to break it apart. So let's have a look at an example. So the first example we're going to go through is the square root of 50. So square root 50. Can you write down the first square numbers? So what are the first square numbers? Well, the first square numbers are 1 times 1, 1. 2 times 2, 4. 3 times 3, 9. 4 times 4, 16. 5 times 5, 25. 6 times 6, 36. 7 times 7, 49. So these are the first 7 square numbers, okay? Biggest number that goes into 50 is 25. So let's break it down. Square root 25 times 2. That massive root we're going to break into 2 roots. Square root 25 times square root 2. So it's 5 times root 2. And because we're going to simplify, we simply write it as 5 root 2. So we get rid of that multiplication symbol in between. Same again for square root 90. What is the biggest possible square number that can go into it? So you write again your square numbers, okay? 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64. So the biggest possible number that goes into 90 is actually the number 9. The biggest possible square number that goes into 90 is the number 9. How many times the number 9 go into 90? 10 times. So that is why we're going to break it down to 9 times 10. Okay, so square root 9 times square root 10. Which will give us 3 root 10, and that's it. Square root 20 would be simply the biggest possible square number that goes into 20 is the number 4. Okay, so square root 4 times square root 5. So simply 4 times square root 5, which is 2 root 5. Continuing with square root 32. So square root 32 would be the biggest possible number that goes into it is simply the number 16. So 16 goes into it twice. So 6 times 2, so it's 4 root 2. So what if you hadn't noticed that the biggest possible square number that goes into it is 16 and you said it was the number 4? Well, let's try it. That would give you 4 times root 8. 4 times root 8, which can simplify it into 2 times root 8. Root 8 can be simplified again though to 2 root 2. 2 times 4 even, which is root 2 times root 4, which is 2 times root 2 times 2, which is 4 root 4. Did we get the same answer? Yes, but it takes a lot longer. So really, really important that you always use the biggest possible square number that goes into it. So have a look at these questions and try them for us. And please make your work.